Hello, wonderful people of the internet. Welcome back to the Anthony Morris Returns channel. My name is Chaka, and in this video, I will be commenting on a very well-known stance that the Jehovah's Witnesses have. Around the world, Jehovah's Witnesses are well known for their anti-political rhetoric. And if you ask the ordinary Jehovah's Witnesses whether they are forbidden from voting in their country's elections, I'm sure most Jehovah's Witnesses would give you the answer, yes, we are forbidden. But is it really the case? Well, to answer this really crucial question, I'm very pleased to be joined by one of my favorite co-hosts, a fellow ex-JW YouTuber activist, Ruby. Welcome back to the channel, Ruby.
Thanks, Chaka, for inviting me on your political discussion because I love politics.
But you can't do that, said one of the critics.
It doesn't bother me.
Really? Again? Really?
Look at that little enemy of God.
Somehow we dilly-and-dally, takes us years, and we wonder why.
What are you waiting for?
Well, what is it that helps all of Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide to be so united and not to be involved with the wars of this world? Well, one of the things that helps us is our Christian neutrality. What do we mean by neutrality? We mean not taking sides in political issues. Of course, we take sides with Jehovah and the kingdom, but with regard to worldly political debates and issues that arise, we don't take sides. The political system is wanting to put its mark on us, mentally as well as physically. So we need to be absolutely certain that we remain neutral with regard to political issues in the world, not only by not being involved actively in the political issues, but also mentally not allowing ourselves to take sides. What are some of the things that perhaps could erode our neutrality? Well, maybe we could mention three things this morning. One is the propaganda that the world puts forward. So we need to be careful not to be influenced by the propaganda of this world, particularly media reports and so on. What's another thing perhaps that could cause us to lose a measure of neutrality? Sporting events. Sometimes sporting events are able to achieve certain goals with regard to nationalism. We see the national anthem being played, many of these events. It reminds me, many years ago, when I was in a different country, a friend of mine asked me to record a certain sporting event. I wasn't particularly interested in the event, but because he made this request, I recorded it. And of course, I wanted to make sure that I'd got the last 10 minutes of it. I thought our friendship may be strained if I didn't get the actual last part of the game. When I watched it, it was absolutely exciting, nail-biting finish. Well, after the brother gave me back the videotape, I thought maybe some of the other brothers who would be interested in this sporting event may want to have it rather than just wipe the tape. So I offered it to several. And each one of them said to me, no, thanks. If we had won, perhaps it would be different. Now, what was the problem? As I said to them, were you watching the game or were you taking sides? An interesting concept because here two different nations were involved. So we have to be careful that even sporting events don't stir up within us certain nationalistic feelings. And perhaps we could take sides with regard to certain events. The third area that perhaps could erode our neutrality are the political promises being made, particularly at election time. Perhaps one of the candidates is from our ethnic background, or perhaps is the same gender as we are. When we look at the political situation these days with many elections, it seems to be more in the form of entertainment than anything else, with music and very colorful characters. But if we were to say in our heart, I hope that idiot doesn't get into power, are we neutral? Or worse still, if we say, I hope the other person gets into power, well, we need to be careful, don't we? I remember many years ago as a young pioneer in Australia, I was facing the conscription issue, the national call-up for the military. At that time, the Vietnam War was being fought. And then there was an election in Australia. And at that time, the party that was trying to get into power said that if they got into power, they would abolish conscription. So now that affected me personally. I remember how hard it was sitting there watching the election results, not to say in my heart, I hope they get in. And then when they got in, not to say, yes. You see, if we personally are affected by some of these political promises, we may violate our neutrality.
When we hear people discussing political topics, we might at first think their conversation is purely philosophical. But when injustice threatens our loved ones, it can seem personal. We expect that people will be divided over political ideology. The question each of us needs to ask himself is, how do I respond when people debate solutions to serious injustices? So as Christians, what is our position where political matters are concerned? We are neutral. We feel this approach is realistic because mankind's main problems are not political, but moral. It's true we don't vote for political parties or candidates, but neither do we disrupt elections or interfere with those who choose to vote. It's true we don't lobby, campaign, or run for government office, but neither do we criticize those in power, undermine their policies, or demonstrate for political change. It's true we won't salute a flag, but neither will we burn a flag, spit on a flag, or disparage the nation that a flag represents, even in lands where these are considered protected expressions of freedom. It's true we don't sing national anthems, but neither do we discourage others from singing, nor do we make a public spectacle of not singing. We simply don't participate. So while we don't promote any political position, neither do we condemn any political position, even in our heart. That is what neutrality means. We don't take sides. But what if the demands of the state conflict with the commands of Jesus? There's a Bible principle for that. Are you thinking of what it says at Acts chapter 5, verses 28 and 29, that we must obey God as ruler rather than men? This is not disregard for the state, but rather reverence for God. If the state demands that we do what God forbids or refrain from doing what God commands, then we believe God would consider that an invalid request. Now, one might say, I can imagine some situations where that viewpoint could get you into trouble. At Revelation chapter 2 and verse 10, Jesus said that some of his disciples would be thrown into prison. Not all of us, but some. So we're not disappointed if we don't get thrown into prison, but neither are we discouraged if we do. Our minds turn to the thousands of brothers and sisters who have been sentenced to prison over the years for their Christian neutrality. We are proud of them. We pray for them. We know that Jehovah is pleased with them. Their endurance under trial spells victory for all of us.
There are many things that divide the world today. There's so much unrest and many conflicts. There's constant effort to make people take sides on political questions and even elections. In fact, it's estimated that billions of people, nearly half the Earth's population, live in countries where there will be or have been political elections this year. We also see an increase of nationalism and patriotic ceremonies, including schools. Even sporting events can stir up nationalistic divisions. All of these things are in the news every day. The world is facing unprecedented problems, and imperfect humans have many ideas on how to solve them. But as Jehovah's Witnesses, how do we view these divisive topics? Of course, we don't get involved in politics. So while we show honor to those who hold positions of authority in the government, we don't get involved in political issues or debates, no matter how right or just a particular cause may seem. So we don't take sides on the world's issues, even mentally. We don't favor one candidate or political party over another, regardless of whether they seem to support or oppose our interests. And we safeguard our heart by limiting how much time we spend listening to or reading news and social media websites, which can leave us anxious, depressed, and even exhausted. Isn't it true that our speech indicates what's in our heart? What if we freely express strong opinions regarding this world's elections, wars, or other political matters? Might that indicate that our neutrality has weakened? This could be like a warning indicator light on a car. Our speech might indicate that we need to give our neutrality some attention. The governing body is sharing these important reminders because Satan, the ruler of this world, is pressuring Jehovah's people like never before. The devil wants us to take sides on these issues. If we do, we are no longer neutral. We could even find ourselves taking a stand against Jehovah and against his kingdom. In effect, we could be acting as though we think the devil has the solution to our problems. Never would we want that to happen. So, dear brothers and sisters, this is a matter that requires our careful and prayerful attention.
Let's answer the $1,000,000 question now. Can you get disfellowshipped, removed, disassociated?
Yes.
These terms get
Yes, you
confusing
can.
if you vote as a Jehovah's Witness. So Ruby says yes, you can. So I'm gonna pull up this watchtower, which is not a recent watchtower. It's in fact a 1999 watchtower. And there was a questions from readers. And this is the most up-to-date information they have on this. This is the watchtower, November the 1st, 1999, pages 28 to 29. And you have that questions from readers. How do Jehovah's Witnesses view voting? So I think because of the misconceptions that have been promoted by the governing body themselves, I think it's helpful if we just read through this entire article. So it says there are clear principles set out in the Bible that enable servants of God, and they mean Jehovah's Witnesses, to take a proper view of this matter. However, there appears to be no principle against the practice of voting itself. For example, there is no reason why a board of directors should not take a vote in order to arrive at decisions affecting their corporation, like the Watchtower Bible Instruct Society Incorporated. Congregations of Jehovah's Witnesses often make decisions about meeting times and the use of congregation funds by voting with a show of hands. And also elders make decisions, important decisions that affect the lives of Jehovah's Witnesses by voting. So what though of voting in political elections? Of course, in some democratic lands, as many as 50% of the population do not turn out to vote on election day. How is that relevant? I don't know. As for Jehovah's Witnesses, they do not interfere with the right of others to vote. Neither do they in any way campaign against political elections. They respect and cooperate with the authorities who are duly elected in such elections. As to whether they will personally vote for someone running in an election, each one of Jehovah's Witnesses makes a decision based on his Bible-trained conscience and an understanding of his responsibility to God and to the state. In making this personal decision, the witnesses consider a number of factors. So was that surprising for you, Ruby? So apparently it is a conscience matter. Whether you go and
Yes.
vote, whether you vote in an election, it is a conscience matter. But they make it look like if you vote, you're gonna be thrown out of the congregation. You've made this big sin, and apparently it's hidden in their literature that it is actually a conscience matter. You can do what you want
Because they
effectively.
have to say that. It's
Yeah.
kind of like they're obligated to say that because
Mhm.
in this country and in similar countries,
Yeah.
you cannot tread on somebody's right to vote. That's
Yeah.
illegal. You cannot tell somebody that they cannot vote or who to vote for. There's lots of laws when it comes to elections and things like that. You have to remember they are projecting their own opinions onto thousands upon thousands of Jehovah's Witnesses, and then they adopt it. No, this is their own. I don't know who came up with this, but
but I think crazy is you never hear that in a talk. You never hear that in a talk at the Kingdom Hall. You
Mhm.
never hear that at an assembly or a convention. You never hear in a JW broadcasting. You won't even hear it in a Watchtower study article, the ones that Jehovah's Witnesses are made to read and regurgitate. You won't hear that this is a conscience matter. What you will be told at those events is it's a horrible thing to do. It means you're rejecting God's kingdom and you're rejecting Jehovah if you vote in an election. So you're right. This is a political message. They're doing this for political reasons, so as not to get in trouble with the authorities. But then what it does is that it muddies the waters for Jehovah's Witnesses because they think, oh my God, if I vote, I'm going to be thrown out of the congregation. That's the assumption that any Jehovah's Witness would make. And
right.
they would find this 99 watchtower. Like, who's going to dig up a watchtower from like,
Exactly.
that's like before you were born, Ruby, wasn't it?
I was 3 years old when that came out. Yeah.
Who's going to dig this thing up?
That first paragraph.
Shall we go back?
Scroll up a little bit.
Let's go back to the first paragraph.
Yeah, before I forget this.
Mhm.
Okay, when they talking about the board of directors, that there's nothing wrong with like the mere, function of voting. They say the same thing when it comes to like games like poker. They say, well, playing cards is okay, but as soon as you put money, now it's gambling. Now all of a sudden it's a sin. You could drink alcohol, but don't get drunk. So it's like, why are you even bringing this up? Because it has a political aspect to it. So the function of voting is not wrong, but because I'm voting in a real election where it can determine the next president of the United States or the next senator or the next person of leadership, all of a sudden it's wrong. Why? That's not a good enough answer for me.
Because they have to justify why they do certain things. If they said voting is completely wrong, then that undermines the whole organization. Because even like, okay, Russell, he wasn't voted in, but Rutherford, who took over after Russell, there was a power struggle and he won it by votes. And this is
exactly, but he was in a position of leadership. So what's the difference here? If it's in a religious setting or a cult setting versus a political setting. So what's wrong with politics? That's what they're, you have to read through the lines. They're saying that
this is the hypocrisy of
wrong.
Watchtower. Yeah, this is the hypocrisy of Watchtower. If it's something they do, they will find scriptures, or even sometimes they don't even need scriptures. They will justify it.
Because they're doing it.
Using
they're
whatever
doing
basis
it behind
because
closed doors. They
don't
want you doing it. See, that's the classism. We could do it. You can't do it, peasant. And that's how they treat us. So this is really good. You're covering this.
This is really important, especially because of all these elections that are happening everywhere. It's important that people know the truth. Okay, so these are the factors they want Jehovah's Witnesses to consider. So first, Jesus said of his followers, they are no part of the world, just as I am no part of the world. Jehovah's Witnesses take this principle seriously. Being no part of the world, they are neutral in the political affairs of the world. Right? That's the first one. The second one, the Apostle Paul referred to himself as an ambassador representing Christ to the people of his day. Jehovah's Witnesses believe that Christ Jesus is now enthroned King of God's heavenly kingdom, and they, like ambassadors, must announce this to the nations. Ambassadors are expected to be neutral and not to interfere in the internal affairs of the countries to which they are sent. As representatives of God's heavenly kingdom, Jehovah's Witnesses feel a similar obligation not to interfere in the politics of the countries where they reside. I almost burst out laughing when I was reading this because, again, they just say things when it suits their agenda. So in the actual literature, what they say is that only the anointed are ambassadors. That's what they say, because there is the two-class distinction, arbitrary two-class distinction of the anointed and the other sheep, which is not in the Bible, by the way. But they say only the anointed are ambassadors for Christ, according to this theology with this scripture. But now, and then they say the other sheep are envoys. But because the idea of being ambassadors suits the agenda they're trying to present in this paragraph, all of a sudden, all of Jehovah's Witnesses are ambassadors. I'm sorry, that's a bit technical in terms of the theology, but I just thought it was important
Yeah,
to
that's
point
like
that out.
mental gymnastics
Yeah.
that I'm not willing to do when it comes to them anymore, because
Yeah.
once again, they're justifying their system, their hierarchy, the
Yeah.
way they function. It's all
Yeah.
justification for how they function.
Yeah.
They and I hate it when they bring scripture and they pick it just to
Yeah.
use it to
They
justify
cherry
what they're
pick it.
saying,
Yeah.
because being no part of the world is in context about sin. We are no part of the world because we are not worldly. We don't do the things that of the world does, because we're supposed to be different. We're following Christ. There is an apparent difference between somebody who doesn't believe in God and somebody who does. That's what it means by being no part of the world. So I hate it. And yo, listen, I'm telling you, Chaka, my mother, she talks to me like a freaking watchtower. So I feel like this is my mom right now. And
It's
and these are the
I'm re-traumatizing you, Ruby.
uh, I'm past it, but it's like it's like I'm talking to my mom again, and that's where we used to have this clash. Is that argument, because I'm like, you're using it in the complete wrong context.
Yeah.
She used to tell me all the time that you can't serve two masters. So if you vote in the political scene, you already voted by baptism. You already chose Jesus as the king of God's kingdom. What does that have to that has nothing to do with what we're talking about here. So they're doing the exact same thing, but it's on paper.
Yeah. so basically your mom's mind has been wiped clean by Watchtower
Oh my god, it's so
propaganda.
sad.
Yeah,
Like
it's
I
very
can't
sad.
even have a regular conversation with her, because then it's gonna bring another paragraph like this,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
that's all she's saying. It's not a human speaking to me. It's an article speaking to me.
Yeah.
And sometimes you can't fight with somebody like that. You cannot debate them, and you cannot talk to them. You just have to let them be. That's just how they want to live their life. Okay. But
There's nowhere to
this is
start
this is this
from.
is what we're dealing with. We're dealing with people who are human versions of these articles, and
Yeah.
they don't even think twice about it. There's like, this is what the governing body said, therefore this is what Jehovah said, and that's it. You don't question God, you don't question the governing body. And it's like, bro, like, come on.
Yeah. Use your brain. Anyway, so they've got three more factors they want Jehovah's Witnesses to consider. So a third factor to consider is that those who have a part in voting a person into office may become responsible for what he does. Christians have to consider carefully whether they want to shoulder that responsibility. So now they are basically emotionally manipulating the Jehovah's Witnesses to think, well, what if you voted in a dictator? And what if he started killing people? And now that's going to be your responsibility. But again, my argument against that would be, what if you didn't vote? And then because of you not voting, the wrong person
Exactly.
ended up in power and ended up doing all these bad things that you didn't want to happen. So why is that not a consideration?
And they quoted First Timothy.
And it's interesting why they've quoted it from the New English Bible. There's always something fishy when they
Does
use
it
a
show you what it
different
says?
translation. So can you see that?
Yeah, never lay your hands hastily on any man, neither become a sharer in the sins of others. What? So what?
Completely taking a scripture out of context. This is talking about appointing elders or something like that. Appointing people in the congregation. I believe that's the context.
And they're trying to say that if you vote for somebody, you could become responsible for what he does? Not chill. No.
It's just mad. It's just mad.
No, that is not right. I'm sorry. That's crazy.
So the final two factors. So fourth, Jehovah's Witnesses greatly value their Christian unity. When religions get involved in politics, the result is often division among their members. In imitation of Jesus Christ, Jehovah's Witnesses avoid becoming involved in politics and thus maintain their Christian unity. And this is again a silly thing. This is the a separatist agenda of the Jehovah's Witnesses. You all have to think the same thing. Otherwise, you can't be family members, you can't be friends. You have to be in the same religion if you want to be friend with someone, if you want to be a family member. But the people who are, I'm sure you have friends who are Republican, your friends who are Democrat, your friends who are independent, or who have different types of views, but that doesn't stop you being friends. Like here in the UK, when there was the Brexit referendum that we talked about on your channel in 2016, there were families where some people were voting to leave the European Union, others were voting to stay in the European Union, but they still stayed families. I have friends. I was kind of, I was like, we should remain. I have friends who strongly feel leaving was the right thing, and they haven't changed their minds. But that doesn't stop me being their friends. Like, this is just madness.
Like, what? No, that third factor, that's fear mongering. That if you vote for somebody, you're gonna share the responsibility. Absolutely not. That's just fear mongering you so that you're scared and afraid.
And it's emotional manipulation as well. It's emotional manipulation. Let's look at the fifth one. Fifth and finally, their keeping out of politics gives Jehovah's Witnesses freeness of speech to approach people of all political persuasions with the important message of the kingdom. So apparently, you can't tell anyone anything about the Bible if you have voted.
Oh my God,
political viewpoint.
No, you're just uneducated and you're not going to have an opinion.
This next paragraph is quite interesting. So it says, in view of the scriptural principles outlined above, which we don't agree with, I don't think they're using any scriptural principles there, it's just the opinions. They say, in many lands, Jehovah's Witnesses make a personal decision not to vote in political elections, and their freedom to make that decision is supported by the law of the land. How is it a personal decision if you are heavily manipulated, influenced, threatened to make this decision? So, like they're saying, in many lands, Jehovah's Witnesses make a personal decision. How do they know that? Have they interviewed each and every individual Jehovah's Witness and say, what do you think about voting? They have imposed this idea on them. And then because the Jehovah's Witnesses are compliant, they're now saying they have made a personal decision not to vote.
Exactly. Now all of a sudden it's a personal decision. Like my mom said, you wanted to get baptized.
I
was like, at 10 years old, really?
10 years old.
This was a personal decision, really? Oh,
Crazy.
get out of here. That's when I say I'm done. I'm wiping my hands with these people because they're
Sometimes
not gonna acknowledge reality. So you can't fight with people that are in La La Land.
True. Then it goes on to say, what though if the law requires citizens to vote? In such a case, each witness is responsible to make a conscientious Bible-based decision about how to handle the situation. If someone decides to go to the polling booth, that is his decision. What he does in the polling booth is between him and his creator. So
after all of that, now it's between you and God. Oh my God.
But again, what they're saying, why they have that sentence there, what he does in the polling booth, is basically what they're suggesting is if you end up going into the polling booth, you have to destroy the ballot. I think that's what they're trying to suggest there.
No, but they're saying like if it's required, like you don't have a choice, you have to vote. Like is that real or is that a hypothetical situation? Because they love to do hypotheticals.
It is actually real. It is actually real. So this is what I'm saying. This sentence here, when they say, so if you're required to vote, so first of all, they're not saying just do it so that you don't get in trouble. No, they're saying everyone has to use their conscience. And then obviously the ones that don't vote and then end up in prison or end up having problems, they're going to look down on the ones that are going to go to the polling booth, right? That's number one. And then number two, if you end up going to the polling booth, they're basically suggesting here that destroy the ballot. Why have this sentence here saying what he does in the polling booth is between him and his creator? So they're basically saying God is going to see what you do in the polling booth. So destroy the ballot or whatever is what they're suggesting. But whether this is real or hypothetical, I will just reference the Malawi case. And I think lots of YouTubers have done really good content on the Malawi situation. So look it up. I think JW Facts, goes into it. Ray Franz, who was a member of the governing body when this situation arose in Malawi. He talks about it in great detail in his book Crisis of Conscience.
Okay.
So basically in Malawi, the situation was that there was one political party, one, not one political party, and that party expected all the citizens to be members of that party. So you were supposed to have a card that indicated that you were a member of that party. Otherwise, it's not just that you'd lose your job. People got attacked, women got raped, people's houses were burnt. And at the time, the governing body, the arrangement was for them to change a policy. They needed to have a 2/3 majority. And basically the majority voted to keep that, voted to say that the Jehovah's Witnesses in Malawi were not allowed to have those political party cards, even though the cards were meaningless, because there was just one party. It's not like there were 5 different parties or whatever, but there was just one party. So having the party just meant nothing. It's same as just being registered with your doctor. And I think I found it interesting going back to the videos that we watched, especially David Schaefer's thing there. It was almost like he was suggesting that if your government says, or the law in your country requires you to vote, it's better for you to go to prison than just to go and vote. And then here they're kind of saying, oh, well, it's a personal decision, use your conscience. So mixed messages they're coming from.
Right. Like, I was just about to point that out. I'm like, no, it's inconsistency.
It is inconsistent. Next, they say, what if a Christian, they have rules for everything. So what if a Christian woman's unbelieving husband insists that she present herself to vote? Well, she's subject to her husband, just as Christians are subject to the superior authorities. If she obeys her husband and goes to the polling booth, that is her personal decision. No one should criticize her. There will be a lot of people criticizing and gossiping about her. What of a country where voting is not mandated by law, but feelings run high against those who did not go to the voting booth? Perhaps they're exposed to physical danger, like happened in Malawi. Or what if individuals, while not legally obliged to vote, are severely penalized in some way if they do not go to the voting booth? In these and similar situations, a Christian has to make his own decision. Each one will carry his own load. Why not just do it? Like, just do it so that you make your life easy. There may be people who are stumbled when they observe that during an election in their country, some witnesses of Jehovah go to the polling booth and others do not. They may say, Jehovah's Witnesses are not consistent. Of course, they're not. People should recognize, though, that in matters of individual conscience such as these, each Christian has to make his own decision before Jehovah God. After you've been given a litany of rules, then you can make your personal decision from this list of rules that we give you, right?
Right.
So basically, my summary of that article is that essentially Jehovah's Witnesses, there is nothing in the Jehovah's Witness rules that stops you. If you're an active Jehovah's Witness now, there is nothing in the rules that stops you from going and voting. Because they're saying essentially it's a personal decision. We think it's bad. We really think you shouldn't do it. We think you're displeasing God, but at the end of the day, it is your personal decision. That's essentially my reading of that article. Would you agree, Ruby?
Yeah, I mean, they do that with everything. That's what makes them so flippy floppy. They are inconsistent, because if you apply that at the end of any topic or subject that can be controversial, then what do you stand for? Where's your red line? Where do you draw the line? And you say no or yes. Like, what did Jesus say? Not to be a lukewarm Christian. So not everything is
you out.
But not everything is left up to a conscious matter. When you have, we are lucky enough to have the Bible, where it can tell you how to live your life. It gives you the exact words that Jesus said, so you follow that. It's not a conscious matter when you're debating a Christian topic. It's either right or it's wrong.
And it's funny that, something like voting, they kind of say, okay, it's a conscience matter. But if you accepted blood, that's not a conscience matter. Even if your life was in danger, the life of a loved one, a child was in danger, it's not a conscience matter.
No.
They would disassociate you if you accept blood
No.
and you refuse to say you're sorry.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
It should be a conscience matter, actually.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
now it is, because now you can use fractions, and now you can have loopholes around God so that you don't have to take a full blood transfusion. You can't trick God, okay? It's either right or it's wrong. Whatever
Yeah.
God commanded, that's what you follow. Now they did a
Exactly.
oopsie. We interpreted this wrong, but they're not going to acknowledge that, and they're going
No.
to create loopholes for Jehovah's Witnesses to navigate their life.
Mhm.
That's wrong as well. No, that's not right, in my opinion. You
It's not
either
a
stand for something or you don't.
Exactly. I think what we should do as well, just for the sake of clarity for the viewers, is
Mhm.
we should go into the Shepherd the Flock of God book. So I'm just going to bring it up on my screen here. So the Shepherd the Flock of God book is the manual that the governing body uses to govern the lives of Jehovah's Witnesses by means of the congregation elders. And this is my copy on the JW Library app. And this thing is updated every 6 months. So this is the most current edition, the April 2024 edition. And I just want to establish for the viewers that actually you can't get removed from the congregation. You can't get disassociated. Nothing seriously bad would happen to you if you voted. So chapter 12 has a whole list of offenses for which you can get disfellowshipped, and it is only for these offenses that you can get disfellowshipped. So there is like sexual offenses, so lots about sex, lots of sexual things that can get you removed from the congregation. And then there's drunkenness, there is gluttony, there is stealing, thievery. Although there's clauses with those don't get you thrown out automatically. There's lots of clauses. Lying, fraud, gambling, fits of anger, refusal to provide for your family, manslaughter, apostasy. So I think this is the interesting one. So under apostasy, they say celebrating false religious holidays, so things like Christmas, participating in interfaith activities, deliberately spreading teachings contrary to the Bible, to Bible truth, causing divisions, promoting sects. So these two have to do with people that disagree with the governing body and the interpretation of the Bible. Employment promoting false religion, spiritism, and idolatry. That's all the offenses for which you can get kicked out of the congregation. There is nothing there that says voting will get you kicked out of the congregation, even though they make it look like that's what would happen.
Oh, I was gonna ask you, Chaka. So they don't consider maybe voting in terms of causing divisions, maybe like having different opinions or gossip?
Let's just have a look at what it says under causing divisions and promoting sects. So they've worded this thing so that there is no two ways about it. These are rules, and the elders have
Right,
to
right.
stick to these rules religiously. So they've
Mhm,
said this would be deliberate action disrupting the
mhm,
unity of the congregation or
mhm,
undermining the confidence of the brothers in Jehovah's
mhm,
arrangement. It may
mhm.
involve or lead to apostasy. So it's basically speaking out against the leadership, speaking out against the governing body, speaking out against the elders, saying things that are not in harmony with their publications, the Jehovah's Witnesses propaganda. That's yeah. The voting would not
Okay.
be in that category. Because
Because in my head, I could think like if they wanted to go rogue, like if they wanted to really enforce that, they can probably say that the brother who's political is disrupting the unity of all the neutrality of the congregation. Because
I guess
you
they
can't go
could.
to a kingdom hall and start talking about politics and say, "Oh, who you gonna vote for?" "Oh, well, I'm voting." It's like you don't talk about those things openly.
True, true. Yeah, yeah. I guess they could, but the actual act of
Hmm.
voting, that
Right.
wouldn't get you disfellowshipped.
Oh, they can. Yeah, they can. And I mean, not in America, because you could get a lawsuit for that.
But no, they can't, because I don't know how many people realize this, but when the elders disfellowship somebody,
Hmm.
they fill in a form called the
Hmm.
S77 form. So it's a notification of disfellowshipping or
Hmm.
disassociation. They've added reproof to that form now as well.
Hmm.
So what happens is after the judicial committee if they decide to disfellowship, they will fill in that form, and that form is sent to the service department. And on that form, there is a point where it says what was the offense. And when you write the offense, you have to reference the Shepherd the Flock of God book. So you have to go Shepherd the Flock of God, chapter 12, paragraph 4, clause 4. So you cannot disfellowship someone for anything that's not in this book. Because I mean, if the elders went rogue and then disfellowship somebody for an offense that specifically is not in this book, if that person appealed, the appeal committee will overturn that decision, and they are going to get talking to, or they could even, they could get into a lot of trouble with the service department and with the circuit overseer. So the elders are very, very careful before they even form a judicial committee. They have to make sure that the offense is clearly outlined.
Now I understand why they change it every 6 months, because they got to keep up with the times.
Exactly.
But that makes a lot of sense, and I'm actually happy that's in place, because this is like their constitution almost. Article 1, Section 2. They have to follow everything, and this is the law of JW land.
Exactly. Who needs the Bible when you can just go?
That's blasphemous, but it's true.
It is true. Let's go into the disassociation chapter as well. So just go quickly, and I think that's chapter 18. Just so I just want to make it crystal clear to the viewers that you cannot be disfellowship, disassociated for voting. So there are 4 things that would make you be disassociated. So it's under paragraph in chapter 18, paragraph 3, actions that may indicate disassociation. So making known a firm decision to be known no longer as one of Jehovah's Witnesses. So this is when you actually write a letter, or you tell the elders, I actually don't want to be a Jehovah's Witness anymore. So they would disassociate you, and obviously you'd be shunned. Joining another religious organization and making known his
that's
intention
obvious.
to remain with it. This is what you've done, Ruby, isn't it?
No, I didn't. No, that's the crazy part. Is because I didn't do nothing, and they're shunning me for what? I just walked into an Orthodox church and I said, "Hey, what do you guys believe in?"
Right.
And
what's wrong with that?
overnight, my family disappeared. Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah, what's wrong with that? You haven't made known your intention to remain with it. Yeah. So, and this is the thing, like, even when you're not disfellowshipped or disassociated, you still get shunned. This is how the
what's the point?
This is how strongly the shunning culture is enforced in this organization. Okay, so this is the one we talked about earlier: willingly and unrepentantly accepting blood. So even if it's a life or death situation, you get a blood transfusion. So if you get the whole blood, or what they call the 4 primary components, so the red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, or plasma.
That's nobody's business. That's nobody. And how would they know that? That's nobody's business. Like, HIPAA laws prevent anybody from knowing your medical history. Well, they can't ask you questions. So that's nobody's business.
The HLC are gonna be by your bedside, aren't they? So
oh my god.
So they're gonna snitch on you if you do it.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And the final one, which may be slightly dips into what we're talking about, taking a course that violates Christian neutrality. Now we just have to read this paragraph. Let's just read the paragraph.
Okay.
So if he joins a non-neutral organization, he has disassociated himself. So you have to join in what they view a non-neutral organization. If his employment makes him a clear accomplice in non-neutral activities, he should generally be allowed 6 months to make an adjustment. If he does not,
I got
he has
some time.
disassociated himself. So is it a sin or is it not a sin?
No, but it can get you disassociated, right? So it's kind of like a reproving. You're like reproved, take some time off, go to timeout, and then come back. And if you don't come back, then we'll take further steps.
Yeah. So basically they'll say to you, you need to so what's this? Employment that makes him a clear. So if you start working for the Democratic Party, for example, or the Republican Party, or I don't know what else they mean by an accomplice in non-neutral activities. I think that's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, because you're
What?
campaigning. It's like you're
Yeah,
volunteering
yeah,
your time and energy to campaign
yeah,
for something that you should be neutral on,
yeah.
which is why they say if he joins a non-neutral organization. So I registered as a Republican. So that's kind of like I probably did disassociate myself already because I did make a clear, like
Uh,
decision to
yeah,
register.
right.
Yeah.
So, do you have to register in order to vote, or can you vote without
Yes.
registering?
No, you have to register and then you have to pick a political party. There's a dozen of them, but you have to pick the party when you register.
So you can't register without picking a party.
Well, you can only pick a party if you're registered. Yeah, like officially pick a party. You
No,
would
I mean,
have to register.
the election that's happening in November.
Yeah.
So if you are an American
Mm-hmm.
and you just wanted to, you haven't decided, like you're an undecided, but you still wanted to vote, would they
Mm-hmm.
force you to register for one or the other party before you're registered?
Oh, yes. Yeah, you have to update your registration. So if you are already registered and you're like an undecided voter, you have deadlines and each state is different and you would have to change your party before that deadline to vote for if it's a closed primary, you would have to do the deadline. The general election, which is for president, it doesn't matter. As long as you're registered, it doesn't matter what party. You could pick whatever you want, doesn't matter. You could vote for
As-
whoever you want as
So
president.
this is what I mean. The general election,
Mm-hmm.
the presidential election,
Yeah.
would you need to register for a certain party to vote for either Trump or Kamala,
Well,
or can you just register so that I'm just registering because I want to have the chance to vote?
you have to pick. It's mandatory. You have to pick a party. You cannot just register and not pick a party. You have to pick, or you can just. Well, I don't actually. You know what? I don't know because when I registered, I didn't see no option as like I don't want to be Republican, Democrat, Independent. It was like you had to choose one or the other.
Right. Okay. So you could register as independent, theoretically
Right. You
speaking.
can pick like a third party. Yeah.
Is there an option of just like independent or
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
without picking a party?
But technically the independent party is a party, so it
All right.
doesn't like that's
Right.
that's
Right. So
technicality,
I
but you
guess
have to pick a party. Yeah.
I guess this is why they've put this in here.
Mm-hmm.
So they're probably thinking about the American setup in mind. So they're making it so that as an
Yes.
American, if you registered to vote, then you've disassociated yourself.
Yes, because you have to make a decision. You cannot be lukewarm with politics
Right.
either. You gotta
So,
pick a side.
so,
Yes.
so it's very nuanced, isn't it? So
Yeah.
I guess what we could say then in summary is that in America, if you
Mhm.
voted,
Mm-hmm.
the chances are you could get disassociated
Yes.
because you have to you have to pick a party to register.
Yeah, you
But
do.
but
Yeah.
that's not true in the rest of the world. In the UK, for example, you just register, and in fact, a
Mhm.
lot of I would say 99% of Jehovah's Witnesses are on the electoral roll because it helps your credit rating to be on the electoral roll. If you're not on the electoral roll, it's really bad for your credit rate. It's bad for a lot of things like
Mhm.
identity checks, bank accounts, things like that.
Mhm.
Openly, it's very difficult if you're not on the register. So
Right.
I would say 99% are on the register, but they don't vote. But I would assume in quite a lot of
Right.
countries, you can register to vote,
Mhm.
but not have to join a party. But I think if you're an
Mm.
American, for you to register
Yes.
to vote,
Yeah.
you have to join a party, which will essentially disassociate you.
Right, and that's why I was a little bit like hesitating because I wasn't educated enough, and I'm
Mhm.
like, well, I don't want to be considered anything, so I picked independent because I was kind of scared. I didn't know
Yeah.
I didn't know anything, but
Yeah.
when people go like door to door registering
Mhm.
voters, that's where the activity come into play because it's like you're going door to door because you
Mhm.
want to register that person for
Yeah.
your party.
Yeah.
Obviously you're not just
Exactly.
registering them to vote for
Exactly.
whoever. You
Yeah.
want them to be in this specific party, and
Yeah.
that's how people volunteer and they take your number and they
Mhm.
do all the political stuff. So because we want
Yeah.
to get more Republican numbers than Democrat numbers in certain
Mhm.
states, because your state can turn red or blue.
Mhm.
or purple. It could be a swing state. So that's why they take that in like seriously. When you register, you better know what you're gonna do. And if you're not ready, just don't register.
Right, right. So just a final question on that. So the party that when you register, the party that you register as, is that what you need to vote for at the election? Or can you change your mind at the actual election?
Yes and no. So certain states have closed primaries, which is like a law that you cannot vote for anybody outside of the party in that state. You have open ones, like the general one. It doesn't matter what party, doesn't matter. As long as you're registered, you can vote for whoever you want. So, for example, in my state, if I want to vote for a Republican person, I would have to be registered as a Republican, because when they print your ballot, they're only going to show you the candidates for your party because it's a closed primary. If you
Right.
want to vote for somebody else, you would have to switch your registration before that deadline. If you miss the
Right.
deadline, you
Well, that's
can't
it.
vote
Yeah.
if you don't
Yeah.
want to vote for your original party.
Right.
So
Right.
it's a little weird.
So these states that have closed primaries,
Hmm.
um, what about the general election? So if say you're at a state that has closed primaries, and during the primaries you register for the
Yeah.
Republicans, for example, and
Hmm.
then when the general election comes around, you decide, actually, I'm not going to vote Republican, I'm going to vote Democrat for president. Can you
Hmm.
do that?
Yeah,
Or
the
would you?
general is open.
Okay.
The general election is open, but there are
Right.
many other elections
Yeah.
which are like state and local that are
Right.
closed.
Right.
So if and even if you don't want to vote for the people
Mhm.
on the ballot, you could
Mhm.
write in a name.
Yeah.
So for open general elections, if you don't want to do Kamala, Donald, or any other party, you can write down another person's name, because
Yeah.
there's like 7 different people running for president right now. So
Right.
you can write any one of those 7 names. It doesn't have to
Mhm.
be the mainstream candidate, but you would have to write it in.
Right. And wouldn't that be considered spoiling your ballot if you wrote in a name that wasn't on the ballot?
No, you just circle other
All
with the
right. All
pen,
right.
and then
Uh-huh.
you write it in
Got it.
the paper
Got it.
ballot. Yeah.
All right. This is really, really interesting. I started off this the concept of this video saying that I'm gonna make a strong case to say that you can not be disassociated, disfellowshipped, removed, whatever, but for voting, you can in America. At least in America, we know you can, because
Yeah.
you cannot vote without joining a party. And if you join a
Right.
party, you've disassociated yourself. That's the Jehovah's Witness doctrine. But if we're just being like pedantic and
Mhm.
going with the actual policy, the wording, actually the wording suggests that really they shouldn't be disfellowshipping people for joining political parties, because they're
Right.
not for joining, but for voting in elections, because they're saying it's a
Right.
personal decision. Um, yeah. So make
Right.
that
But
make of that
they're
what you
not
will.
supposed to do that in America, though. Let's
Mhm,
just get that straight. That's a
mhm,
human rights violation in this
mhm,
country. And there
mhm,
are laws saying that
mhm,
no organization or person is supposed to coerce your vote, tell you who
mhm.
to vote for, or shun you as a religious organization for voting.
Yeah.
So if that ever happened and you had a legal case, I would sue Watchtower if
Mhm,
my family or the organization disfellowshipped or disassociated me against my will just because I registered to vote in America. So
mhm,
that's where you need to get involved legally. This is the
mhm.
only way we can take down Watchtower, is
Yeah.
to get involved legally and bring them down by treading on our rights.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think if there are any Jehovah's Witnesses watching, I hope there are Jehovah's Witnesses that are watching and they're kind of thinking, should I vote? Should I not vote? I would
Mhm.
say vote. You don't have to tell
Right.
the elders, you don't have to
Right.
tell your family
Nobody's
or whoever.
business.
It's nobody's business. Just vote. And if you got into trouble and they said, well, you voted, well, technically speaking, it's your personal decision to vote, but you have broken this rule because you've joined the political party in order to
Mhm.
register, you can just
Mhm.
pull out the 99 watchtower. You can pull out the 1999 watchtower and just say, this thing says this is my personal decision. um
Exactly.
and what I do in the polling booth is between me and my creator.
Exactly
That's what
right.
it
You have
says.
to use it against them.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
Mm-hmm.
my message to you, particularly Jehovah's Witnesses, is go out and vote. If there's lots of elections happening this year,
Mm-hmm.
in Europe. The big one, of
Mm-hmm.
course, is the United States, and the majority of the
Mm-hmm.
viewers on this channel are from the United States anyway. So, so yeah, go out and vote. I mean, do what you want, but don't not vote because you think you're breaking God's law. There is no law in the Bible,
Right.
even according to Watchtower itself. There is no rule in the Bible that says people can't vote.
Right.
Mhm.
Good case, good point, Chaka. I'm so happy that you covered this and invited me to join you, because that's exactly what I do on my show. I'm breaking
Mhm.
down those fears and that
Mhm.
barrier that we can't talk about political things. Of course you can.
Mhm.
You can
Mhm.
educate yourself. You could even talk to the candidates that are running. I've spoken
Yeah.
to a few. And
Mhm.
that's kind of scary, but just do it, and that's
Yeah.
how you learn. Just open up your mind and stop being afraid of living your life. Live your
Mhm.
life, and as long as you keep, if you're still Christian, if you keep God as your focus, if you keep Jesus Christ as the focus of your life, everything else falls into place. You don't have to be nitpicking at every little decision or every little thing, being afraid that you're going to lose everlasting life if you, God forbid, you vote. Like, you know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Like,
Mhm.
stop it. Come on,
Yeah,
stop.
yeah, come on,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and I think just to kind of amplify your point there, Ruby. So
Mhm.
Ruby does a show on her channel. It's called the XJW Political Corner, and it's
Yes.
absolutely fascinating. She has different guests with different political persuasions, different opinions on things, and it's a live stream. So what that means is you can participate in the discussion. You know, she's very good at picking up the comments that come through in the comments, and also some on, I don't know if this happens on every episode, but there are episodes where the link is provided so that you can just jump on as a viewer
Yeah.
and make your contributions.
Mhm.
And you know, for those people that just still kind of trying to make sense of politics, and that this is a really helpful show, because she doesn't
Yes.
just focus on the United States. You bring in guests from different countries, and they elaborate on the political systems in those countries. So it's
Mhm.
really interesting. I
Yeah.
could not recommend it more. I hope the viewers found this video useful. Please don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel. Don't forget to subscribe to Ruby's channel. I'll put a link in the description. It's at New Yorkerican, in case you're wondering. And I look forward to the next time we do a video together, Ruby.
Yeah. Thank you. Bye.
But you can't do that, said one of the critics.
That doesn't bother me. Really? Again? Really?
Look at that little enemy of God.
Somehow we dilly and dally. Takes us years, and we wonder why.
What are you waiting for?